Hello, everybody. What's going on? We are live. I appreciate your patience while we were getting everything set up. In case you are confused and wondering who I am, my name is Antonio Bryce. I am the creator of the comic book series Brand, which is unfortunately closed on Indiegogo, but we had a very successful campaign, over $78,000 raised, thanks to the kindness of good folks such as yourself. I am very much looking forward to this conversation with my next guest. He is an animator of over 40 years in the business. It looks like, as I view his body of work, my entire childhood is right before my eyes. I'm seeing the Star Wars Holiday Special, which I remember watching as a child with my mom and dad. Dragon's Lair, Space Ace, the Care Bears movie. I remember I saw the Care Bears movie.
HeMan?
Oh, yeah. HeMan, She-Ra. Oh, my goodness. Brave Star, which I used to love Brave Star. You've got so many. I even saw X-Men Evolution, which I remember watching. You've worked on so many properties. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome to the channel, John Celestri. How are you, sir?
Hi, how do you do?
I am doing quite well, sir. It is a pleasure to have you here. I just like I said, the list of credits that you have are breathtaking. You've probably forgotten more about anime. I'm an animation nut. That's one of the big things.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm a big animation nut. So
okay. Well, I gotta tell you, I don't look at my resume very often. Let's put it that way.
Oh my! I was like, I saw your first credit goes all the way back to like 1975, which my birthday is March 14th of 1975. That was the year I was born.
Oh, geez. Okay.
So yeah, you've been doing this long, and I've been alive, brother. But what a career!
Hey, I'm still going.
Yeah, well, that's what we're not putting you out to pasture. I just want to celebrate.
Okay.
That's good. So let's go all the way back. So I was a twinkle in my mom and pop's eye. It's 1975. How do you break into the business?
Well, back then there were maybe two schools of animation. Back, you had the Cal Arts, which was Chenard, and then what was it? Sheridan. And up in Oakville, Ontario. But I broke in I grew up in New York City in Brooklyn, and I was always someone who enjoyed drawing. I mean, I remember the first thing that I saw that was drawn for me was Mickey Mouse, and it was a cousin that from Ohio that came by, and he was a gentleman who had a little bit of an artistic bent. And I was about 4 years old at the time, and I was fascinated that he drew Mickey Mouse for me. So, hell, gargoyle, a whole bunch of people there. So that got me started, and I was drawing ever since. And it's a long, involved story of how I got to doing animation, but by the time, let's put it this way, I was trying to draw. Okay, I applied as I sent a bunch of drawings to Disney when I was about 6 or 7 years old. I did a dog walking and a couple of poses, and I stapled them together so you have a little flip book. And so my mom sent that in, and they sent me back a nice little form letter saying, "That's very nice that you," and here's, and they sent me a bunch of storyboard printout sheets from Lady and the Tramp, and there were promotional sheets, but they were big broad sheets, like 17 by 22 inches, that sort of thing. So I had that, and but I was always wanting to be an artist or cartoonist. I would copy Wayne Boring. I would do my version of every superhero imaginable, and then I would also I wanted to be a sports cartoonist.
Interesting.
Yeah. Well, okay. So you're talking about, I'm born in 1949. So
In Brooklyn.
In Brooklyn.
In Brooklyn. Were you a Dodgers fan?
Yeah. My dad was a big Dodgers fan.
Jackie Robinson, all that good stuff.
Oh yeah. Well,
there you go.
His favorite player was Roy Campanella.
Interesting. Okay.
Yeah. Yeah. And back then, all the Dodgers lived in Brooklyn.
That's I love watching those HBO documentaries and stuff when they talk about it. Liv Schreiber does a lot of the voiceovers on that. I don't know. I'm just like I said, I love like voiceover work. I love animation. So I don't know why I wanted to know who. I was like, who is the narrator on this? It's Liv Schreiber, who is he played Sabretooth in one of the X-Men movies and stuff like that. He's been in everything, and he's what's that? Ray Donovan on Showtime and all that. I mean, Liv Schreiber's done so many. Yeah, but he's a great voiceover guy. He does a lot of these documentaries that you watch on HBO and stuff. So he's a voiceover. So I enjoy his work. But yeah, so it's like I watched something on the Brooklyn Dodgers back then. They were talking about Jackie Robinson and all. So I always find this stuff fascinating. So.
Well, I wanted to be a writer as well. Right? Oh yeah, I do both. I write and draw. So it's not just animation. I was doing comic books. I was writing my own stories as a kid. I liked Broadway. I liked reading Broadway scripts. The not the librettos for the musicals, but rather the actual scripts, that you do, for plays and such. I had a mix, a whole mix of interests, but I wound up being more academically oriented in my education. I wound up I was at Pratt Institute and for architecture, and architecture. And switched over to the art, to their fine arts class, but I just couldn't. It just didn't work for me. I moved up to Fordham University as a math major. So there's a whole lot of things. But I always wanted to draw to create my own comic strips. That was the thing. So when you're doing comic strips for syndication and things of that sort. You're learning how to do gag strips, but also story. How do you tell a story? So you start, I was trying to find myself. And it wasn't until I was working at the New York Athletic Club as in their magazine staff that I was assigned to go and to quick sketch the Olympic fencing team. And I came back with a whole bunch of quick 30-second sketches and whatnot, and my teacher and my editor said, "These are great. This is what you do." And I said, "Okay." And then I happened to be decided to. It was the 50th anniversary, the retrospect of Disney at Lincoln Center. I still have the program, and I remember exactly the date. I say, "I want to do this. I want to do animation." It was watching. It was Peter Pan, and it was the first time they'd seen it on the big screen for a long, long time. And this is 1973, 72, 73. And there's a scene where they're flying over London, and it was a multi
with the kids and the whole thing. Trust me, I watched that movie so many. Yeah.
I was watching that, and I said, "That's what I want to do." And it was from that point on that I started focusing on that, and I wound up then getting self-teaching. I had a 6-week, 1 night a week class at the School of Visual Arts during the summertime, the 6 weeks, and the teacher. I did my first piece of animation for him, and it was like a 1-minute piece of a rabbit doing shadow boxing, and it was in the Fleischer style. And so Warner Brothers and that sort of thing. And he said, "Did you ever animate before?" No, that was my first piece. So I started focusing on everything animation wise, drawing and posing. And what was I going to say? Everybody knew everybody in New York City. So he was a Terry Toons Fleischer storyboard person. And he connected me with other people in other studios that were that way. And they didn't have any work for me. But one guy, after a year of me dragging my portfolio around, from studio to studio to studio, which were all 2, 3, 4, 5-person shops doing commercials for Sesame Street, the advertising houses. And I got linked up with the School of Visual Art, with New York Institute of Technology. And that's the first credit that you see is Tubby the Tuba.
Okay, so Tubby the Tuba.
Those guys were all, the Dr. Alexander Shore owned the New York Institute of Technology. That's Shore Electronics, the old thing. His father created the electronic company, and he was trying to figure out. This is Alexander Shore wanted to figure out how to do computer animation. So Ed Catmull, he was part of his staff at Catmull, was wound up at being Pixar, Disney, all of that. And he was on one side of the campus, and this whole staff of maybe 50, 60, 70 people were on the other side of the campus doing traditional animation, and they were figuring out, this is what kinds of problems you needed to do, a computer needed to overcome to be able to create images that moved. And so that's where I got my training, was through the old Popeye and Mighty Mouse animators. That's
Here I come to save the day.
Oh, yeah. Oh,
I love Mighty Mouse, though. It's like Mighty Mouse is, I was like, I don't know why. I'm a big fan of like Captain Marvel, Mighty Mouse, stuff like that. I don't know. I love cartoons and stuff like that, which I've been told that at my advanced years that I should not like such things. But these are the things that I enjoyed as a child. And I guess, as previously mentioned, I guess the first example of your work that I saw was the Star Wars Holiday Special, where you were involved in the Boba Fett animation that appeared, which was his actual breathing into the world, as it were. Yeah. So how did you get that gig?
Well, it's once again, everybody would know everybody in the industry. Back then, in the 70s, the industry had collapsed upon itself, so that there were maybe 350 people in the entire industry in New York City. And then there was maybe about 800 in Los Angeles. So if somebody sneezed in New York, someone said Gesundheit in Los Angeles. Everybody knew what was happening to each other. And so I wound up being at doing Raggedy Ann and Andy as an assistant animator. I had my own little crew there, and that was with Richard Williams, Dick Williams, who went on to direct Roger Rabbit.
I love that movie. That movie was groundbreaking.
Oh yes, yeah. Oh yeah. Well, Oscars there. That's how I got to connect with the people in Toronto, where the Star Wars Holiday Special was done, and that was like, I worked for them, went back to Los Angeles, went out to Los Angeles after a while, worked with, I was hired by Friz Freeling.
Yes. He's visited all these legends.
Yeah, that's where you got Baggy Pants and the Nitwits and a bunch of other things, and then I went back to to Toronto, and that's where we were, at the Nelvana, where they were hired by Lucas, because he liked the half-hour special we had done called A Cosmic Christmas, and so about aliens, the three wise men coming from outer space looking for the star and looking to see what's the meaning of Christmas. And he liked what we were doing for that.
Let me ask you this. Because George Lucas at that time wasn't George Lucas, so did he contact you directly, or did he have people at that time?
I think, well, Well, what was happening is that one of the producers was in of Nelvana, was showing the screening of to what was it Viacom. Viacom, was at that point was sort of an upstart company pulling together these syndicated shows, and we were their animation arm. And so the producer from Nelvana was showing the final cut of A Cosmic Christmas to him, to the staff and the higher muckamucks of the syndication company, and that's how Lucas saw what we were doing, and he was looking for and so Star Wars had just broken. This is 1977. So Star Wars had just broken. They were looking for somebody, a company or an animation studio house to do something, for this TV show, because that's what you did back then. You tried to get a half hour or an hour holiday special of some sort. Everybody was doing that on TV in the 1970s. So, but Lucas liked what we were doing because it had a different feeling from your typical Hollywood animation. It was very European in feel, what we were doing, because Toronto and Canada, they had all the influences from the British and from the national, the National Film Board of Canada. So what we were doing was still full animation, or as full as we could make it on the budget, but it had a different feel to it.
And there wasn't digital animation,
there was no such thing. Digital animation didn't happen for another 22 years.
Oh yeah. You actually had to, it's like there was some movie they were trying to make it look. They wanted it to look 2D animation, but everything was being drawn digitally. They were drawing it like on some kind of tablet, but they, still had to animate each frame, obviously, but it wasn't going to be the 3D modeling. It was just going to be, still going to, and it looked great, but I kind of miss, every now and again you see those sales pop up on eBay or something. It's like, oh, this is from The Little Mermaid, or this is from The Lion King, or something like that, where it was actually,
that caps, there was a coloring system, but that was until like about 1989-90. So that happened Photoshop hadn't been invented yet.
Yeah, a lot of stuff hadn't. I've talked to my brother has 4 children, and fortunately 3 of the 4 are grown now. He's only got one more. My youngest nephew is 13, but you try to you try to tell them how things were back in it. They just assume this technology always existed, and they like to game a lot or something. You talk about playing different, they're on like Xbox and PlayStation. And I was like, your father and I, we were on an Atari 2600, and it was they couldn't really process it. They didn't get what I was saying. They thought everything, it always looked great like this, how realistic the video games are and stuff like that are now.
Well, the Space Ace and Dragon's Lair all hand-drawn and hand-painted.
Yes. I've seen some old making. There's still stuff on YouTube you can like Google and put it in, and they'll be showing, I guess, footage from like 30 some odd years ago, and you'll actually see the animator sitting in there drawing stuff. And I love that. Do those sales still, do the original sales still exist for any of those? Or
Bluth's probably has Don Bluth probably has a bunch of them. I've got a few. I mean, we were all given some cells from Dragon's Lair and Space Ace, and that was, that was something that we all, we got a chance to get, every now and then you get something. Oh, I do want to say one thing on the Star Wars Holiday Special. I'm the only one who did Boba Fett.
Okay, so you were that's another thing I remember seeing from a lot of those old Disney movies. When you look at the credits, there would be a lead animator on all the main characters.
Right.
So like if you're watching Aladdin, this is, this guy's the lead animator on Aladdin. This guy's the lead animator on Jasmine. This one's handling Jafar and all that kind of stuff. So I noticed that. So you were the Boba Fett guy, which I love Boba Fett. So
yes, I am the Boba Fett guy. Yes, the only people who drew Boba Fett were my follow-up team, in terms of cleaning up my poses and doing my in-betweens. But there were no other animators on Boba Fett.
Did you have to design his costume, or did they give you concept art, or how did that happen?
Well, what happened is that if you see there was no concept art. What there was the black and white video of Boba Fett being shown. Walked in, and there was a costume test. You'll see it if you look on online. This is 1977, 76. So they had what the pieces were and how the character moved about. But that was the only it was about like 4 or 5 minutes, and that's all we had as the reference. So then, so we had this black and white video referencing, no color. It was like a Boba Fett was basically a stormtrooper's uniform changed back then. It was there was an adjustment that went on. Then what the instructions that we were given were to this is Lucas saying that he wanted us to follow study Mobius in Heavy Metal, in the Heavy Metal magazine.
Yeah.
And Mobius, that was the style he wanted it to be. So what we did was Frank Nissen, who was our lead designer, he came up with 4 basic poses that I thought, like what the costume looked like. And I will show you.
All right.
Let's see here. Now you see,
hold on, let me put it on you.
That is the basic pose that we had. That was it.
Oh man,
so
that's history right there.
Yeah. So what happened then was I would take this, and it's quite flat. It's all the basic elements, but then what I would do is I would draw. I moved it around. It was in the movement of how the character, that's how I took the flatness of it and then gave it, more form. And the acting and so on is all mine. So that's how we did it. We were at Nelvana. We were very young. When I was doing Boba Fett is 1978, so I'm 28 years old.
Oh wow!
And I'd been like in the business professionally for about maybe 3 years, and so that all told. So we were all working on energy. That's basically what we had. We had energy and just ambition to do this stuff. So that's basically what we had to work with.
Okay, let me ask you this. Okay, so the Star Wars Holiday Special airs that year, and I know it had B. Arthur in it, and the guy from the Honeymooners.
Oh yeah, Art Carney.
Yeah, okay, they were all like I said. I remember for years I was telling people that this thing existed. I saw it. I remember watching it, and people were like, "No, that didn't exist." And then every now and again, I would run into people, and they were, "I remember that too. I saw it as well." Like there was this thing that the holiday special didn't exist. It was a myth because it only aired that one time. But
right,
But now you see on eBay, there are a few people that, or at least one person that recorded it, commercial and all, and you can purchase a copy of it, and it'll get the whole. And obviously, someone has uploaded it on YouTube where you can watch the entire thing straight through, commercials and all. It has all those 70s commercials and all that. But there was talk that Lucas was embarrassed. Well, he's mentioned that he didn't quite like the way the holiday special turned out. But I've noticed some people there's been so many people that have clipped out your work, the Boba Fett segment, because obviously Boba Fett is such an important character in Star Wars, the Mandalorians, all that. Now the Mandalorian show on Disney Plus is such a huge hit. They say it's like the most streamed show of all time when it debuted, and they actually made, what was it, the Life Festival or whatever from the holiday special is like canon now. So how did you, because like I said, it only aired that one time, and a lot of these Christmas specials, they keep airing them year after year after year. You know, like the Charlie Brown holiday specials always air every year and everything. The Star Wars holiday special has been buried, but it's still alive, obviously, on YouTube. And I've seen millions and millions of people have watched them. And they know your work from that, obviously. So how do people react when they realize that you're the guy that animated Boba Fett for the first time?
Not too many people know that. You know, I mean, people don't make the connection because there's no credits. Okay, but now over the last 3 years, that's starting to change a little bit, because the StarWars.com, the official website that they interviewed me as person to do Boba Fett, and that goes from, because they checked with the studio that did the Star Wars holiday special, and then people contacted me, and so we went back and forth on it. And so there's a full-blown interview with me on the StarWars.com for for Boba Fett. So there's that as official, but it's not something that you don't get to see that very much. I mean, I think they've shown on my credits that it does say that it's Nelvana, but it's uncredited, artists on the website, the IDBM thing with lists all my credits. You'll see Star Wars holiday special.
Yeah. Trust me, your IMDb is like a mile long with all the different things. Like you said, I want to talk about so much of the stuff because I'm a huge HeMan fan.
Okay.
So, HeMan. I loved HeMan, and people rag on like the animation style now. Like when they brought it back, they were like, "Oh, we're gonna have improved that." I liked HeMan and She-Ra the way they were. I don't know. I guess I'm an old fuddy-duddy and stop trying to improve everything. But I liked it's just like those old Fleischer Superman cartoons with what they used, the rotoscoping or whatever. However,
there was a certain amount of rotoscoping up to a certain point because they would use the posing, but you can't do cartoony posing, live action wise. It doesn't work. If you look at the Fleischer stuff there, now they made the mistake. If Fleischers would do, they rotoscoped Gulliver in Gulliver's Travels. That's pure rotoscope. But if you use rotoscoping to get human subtle basic poses, and you have a general idea. Fleischer, the Fleischer Superman cartoons, they're very still squashed and stretchy. There's a lot of power and punch and pizzazz to it that you don't get in live action.
You don't understand how much I love those old Superman. Matter of fact, on my Amazon Prime, that's one of the things I have saved. They have you can watch the entire thing on Amazon Prime and go. And a lot of those, they were only like 15 minutes, if that, or whatever.
They were 5 minutes. There was 6 or 7 minute long.
It was like it's just, and I love those old like somebody shooting like some kind of big Gatling guns at him, and he just like boom, 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 boom. I love the way, you know, with the actual orchestral music and all that. You just don't. That's always also probably why I was drawn to Star Wars, because it was done like old school, like you'd see those old Flash Gordon serials and stuff where it actually has an orchestra behind it. And I love John Williams stuff, and you know, he's just so obviously I was drawn to the work you did. But did you do Dragon's Lair first, or did you do HeMan first?
Dragon's Lair.
Dragon's Lair. Okay. And that, did you realize, okay, so Dirk the Daring is iconic to me. You know, it's like I like, and part of me likes Space Ace more in a sense because one of my favorite heroes is Billy Batson, Captain Marvel. I love him. So the fact that you have a child that can transform into this superhero, I kind of copied that in my comic book brand, where the main character is this kind of big fat guy, and then he turns into this huge muscular superhero. He's no longer a fat guy. That's a nod to Billy Batson, Captain Marvel. And so I kind of leaned. I'm surprised that Space Ace wasn't as successful as Dragon's Lair. To me, it seemed like the more fun property. But I love both. But for whatever reason, I like Space Ace, and I remember even watching the cartoons for both of those when they were. I think they were on ABC.
Yeah, I think that. Well, they were through Ruby and Spears. You know, there was I worked on the Dragon's Lair TV series, but that was a hard period in my life because I really did not like working on Turbo Team.
I was like, what? Do you want to expand on that, or
did you ever see Turbo Team?
I was like, that's not the kid that turns into the car.
Yeah,
that's like, I remember that cartoon because
you look at my credits, it's right there.
And I was like, but the thing is, it wasn't one of my favorites, but I love the animation sequence when he turned into the car, but I thought the idea was stupid.
I'm sorry, that's very obscene.
I'm just because he used to he would take his fist, boom, and then it would start turning into one of the wheels, and then and then he would go down, and then and then his face would stretch out.
I know, it's very Well, and then the trunk, the junk in the trunk would come out.
I remember that because there was also the Rubik's Cube cartoon. I used to watch all that stuff. And I was just like, but I do remember the and then his face, and then he would start turning like red and stuff like that. You can obviously a lot of those cartoons, just like HeMan, you can find HeMan clips, you can find Brave Star clips and stuff like that on YouTube is full of people uploading other these properties, but a lot of times that's the only way you can find some of these things. Matter of fact, there's a couple of old Disney cartoons that are quote unquote banned or whatever. They're deemed inappropriate or racist or whatever. You can find those clips on YouTube. There are people that have managed to find, and I think those things should be preserved.
Yes, well, that's a part of that's part of what actually occurred. And so much, and I mean, like, you remember, it's kind of like the Fleischers were doing, they had Cab Calloway, they had all of those jazzy guys because they worked at night in New York City. The studio was in Manhattan, it was on Broadway. So they got all of those, this is the Fleischers of the 1930s, 1920s and 30s. They had all of those musicians, come in and do all those things, but you've got some stuff there that people would not allow today. I mean, Betty Boop.
Betty Boop. There was one called, what was it? Something Snow White or something Black or what?
Snow White. It was Snow White. They did Snow White before, Disney did it.
And it had like the jazz people and
Oh,
stuff
yeah,
like that.
yeah.
Yeah. I saw it. It's. I've looked this material. Like I said, I'm old school. I love old school animation, particularly because it's hand drawn, and I think we've lost a little something with all the technology that we have now. But I know it's probably easier, but I can. Although
the animation, doing animation computer wise.
Yeah,
no.
I think.
Oh no. You need like 15 different specialists, because they all spent most of the animation is so specialized. Who does who can do the fur on this there, and who does so and so, who can do the puppetry. There's one thing, and then everything is so different, put together differently than a quick sketch. And your gesture drawing, your squash and stretch, all of that, you don't have to build it into the algorithms or the computers or the codes to allow you to do that. You could do whatever you want with a pencil.
Let me ask you this, since you, like I said, you old school animation. Did you ever encounter any of the wise men from Disney? The reason I ask is one of my favorite movies is The Incredibles. Was it Bradley Bird?
Bird.
He actually had two of the wise. I guess the only two that were still alive. They had a cameo.
Ollie.
Yeah.
Frank Thomas and Ollie Johnston. Oh yeah, I had them come over to. I got the connection with them. When I was in California in '77, when they were just retiring. And so I got their information, their contact information from the union, because I was a union member. And so when I went to California, I was asked by the Nelvana people to get information of people who would be, suitable, or I thought would be able to give us lectures. And so we had Frank Thomas and Ollie Johnston visit us for a week up in Toronto in 1978, when we were just before we were doing the holiday special. So they came, and they were up there, Frank, and they gave us a week's a lecture series where we shut down the studio for a week and had everybody. He was giving these two would give us lectures on animation and such.
Well, yeah, like you said, I'm fascinated by all of this. Is probably like way too geeky, but I've got a buddy of mine. My buddy Fahad is an animator at Nitrogen Studios. He's got stuff on what was that movie Seth Rogen did? Sausage Party. Sausage Party with all the weird foods and all that. And he actually, I actually stayed because he was, I'm in Murfreesboro, Tennessee, and his family is here in Murfreesboro. He went to MTSU, Middle Tennessee State University, right here. And he had to, it was a sad day. He actually had to move to Canada to work at the studio there. But then, we're still friends on Facebook, and he said, I've got a movie coming out, Sausage Party, and which I had already saw the trailer, and it was great. And, it was a little raunchy and whatnot. But I was so excited. He's like, if you stay, he said, there's a lot of credits at the end of the movie, but if you stay, you'll actually see my name. And, my girlfriend at the time, she was annoyed. She was wanting to leave. And I was like, no, we have to see Fahad's name come up. And we stayed, and it was almost at the end of the credits. And I was like, there it is. And his name came up on the screen. I was so happy. And I contacted, I was like, man, I'm so proud of you. And it's and he's got a couple of cartoons that he's animated. He's the 3D animation that are on Netflix now. And I'm he's living his dream as an animator, and I'm so proud of him. But
that's great.
But he's doing it with the computers, so it's not. Although on some of those shows, it has fascinated me because you still see that they have to actually start by drawing the concept art or whatever of the character. And then you start modeling and doing all that kind of stuff.
It really depends on who they want to set the tone. I mean, some people, made this, a handful of people made the switch over I'm talking about the classical animators. The ones in the last, I'd say the last 15 years, it's been Cintiq, it's been Photoshop all the way. It's very different. Many people just don't do pencil and paper. I may be one of the last of the pencil and paper animators. You know, I mean, I still when I draw, I use pencil and paper.
And then what do you scan it in
and then I'll use either Toon Boom, the old studio Toon Boom, or now I'm using what is this? This is Clip Studio Paint.
Oh yeah. Clip Studio Paint, all that kind of stuff. Well, so I want to actually look at your because you've got this project called Ruff Sketch, and I want to. Let me see if I can do this. Sometimes this thing locks up on us when, I want to actually show it and let people.
Okay, you
are doing. Okay, is it showing?
Yep. Yep, I see it.
Okay, I can. Okay, good. Okay, good. Okay.
Yeah.
So this is your project, Ruff Sketch, an animation and comic book portfolio. This is by the great John Celestri, and it's a thrill talking to you today, sir. Tell me what, as you can see, I see Batman there. I see my man Dirk the Daring and Boba Fett and all this. What you did? What was it? You worked on? What was it? Rock and
Rule.
Rock and Rule. Yeah, I mean, dude. Like I said, I've looked at. Like I said, I was surprised when I saw the Care Bears movie on your credits, and I remember seeing the Care Bears because they had a show that used to come on. It was like Care Bears, My Little Ponies, and all that stuff. And they would all of and then they the Care Bear movie was pretty successful. I was on
the first Care Bear movie. That's what the credits that I have is from the Care Bear movie. If you notice, you got on the Batman is from the 4 Batman commercials I did for the Canadian department store Zellers in the 1980s. And we did Batman 4 Batman commercials, one with the Joker, one with Catwoman, what with the Penguin, and the other one with the Riddler. So I have that. That was my. I go from the beginnings of how I started, and these are pages from from the book that I'm laying out right now.
I see Raggedy Ann and Andy right here.
Yeah. And then you got Boba Fett there.
Oh wow. Yeah, this is historic, man. This is awesome.
There's another Boba Fett drawing there. And then Rock and Rule comes up. And I did 3 characters. And now this is the thing that's so cool is that I still hear stories about, high school kids today seeing Rock and Rule and thinking, you did drugs back then? I mean, look at that list of people.
Man.
And Fire, Deborah Harry,
which rest in peace to Deborah Harry. It's like
Henry. That was with Blondie.
Yeah. Like, what was it? I think their song "The Rapture" is actually. I think I remember hearing that was like the first mainstream hit to have rap on it. It was she does the little bit at the end. She goes Fab Five Freddy, and then she starts that was supposed to be like the first mainstream because rap had been out, but it hadn't really crossed over into like mainstream.
Right.
It was just underground, like radio people were playing and stuff, and so that's widely credited as one of the first like mainstream songs to have like any kind of rap on it. So I was salute to
we started working on Rock and Rule in 1980.
And these movies take a while to do, right?
Yeah, I was on that I was on. There was 6 months in development, and in terms of the characters that I was working on, and then I think it was about 2 years into working on it, because then they were fine tuning, and then it just kind of it became an orphan because the management of MGM had a regime change, and so everybody's, all the babies from the previous administration were just killed off. They just didn't, they put them out there for a week, and that was it. So it was really tough, to see that. But high schoolers look at this and they see the energy, the raw energy, and the exuberance of the music and whatnot, and it's still basically garage bands with a dream.
This stuff is, matter of fact, I know some of this popped up on, again, people have taken these movies and loaded them up on YouTube, and you can watch them, so it's always good to be able to go back, and this was also before Dragon's Lair, is that not correct?
Oh yeah, I left, I was Dragon's Lair is 83. I'm working on this from 1980 to 82. That's Cindy Schlepper. She's the disco roller skating disco queen. She's a 15, 16-year-old gal, and she's one of the minor characters, but she was a lot of fun. That's Officer Quadhole from there, and he was one of the villains, and this is Mylar, the club owner.
Wow, this stuff is great, man. I love this. This is awesome. And there's
Batman from one of the. This is from the Joker commercial.
I'm gonna have to look those up. I bet someone is
on that, and you can see it. If you click on the YouTube channel,
the actual
you click on that, and it should link you right up to the commercial.
Oh, good. I can check that out. Yeah, because sometimes when you play stuff like that,
it gets crazy. Yes.
Yeah. So, okay.
Okay. So these are. I go to my more, my more recent stuff, which is the comic book work and whatnot, the personal stuff. This is Snuffy and Zoe, and I do. I did I did a short animation film for myself, and I was asked, as there was an idea that I could do, maybe I could do some children's comic books. So I've done 2 of those, and I'm doing another series. This is what the pose will be. This is what I'm using as my pose for all those who are going for the upper tier of the Boba Fett drawing.
Yeah, because let me see. I know you have a Boba Fett drawing as one of the perks here.
That's it down there. If you just passed it, yeah, that's it there.
The Master Animator here. So you can get a sweet Boba Fett, and I don't know what your shipping is on that.
It depends on where you are. I mean, in the States, it's $7.
Oh man, that's a breeze. And you can get a sweet Boba Fett sketch from the man that first bore him life in the So I think that's pretty awesome. Like I said,
you'll get the print copy of the book, which is 84 pages, and a PDF of that book, plus Snuffy and Zoe's a PDF of Snuffy and Zoe's What Do You Do with a Stinky Pirate?
I like that. What do you do with a stinky pirate? That's an interesting question.
Yep.
I was like, so you mentioned obviously that you're still working. You haven't retired.
No. Yeah. Well, I'm sort of. I mean, I do my own stuff. Okay, and so we're doing this as my as a Kickstarter with an Indiegogo campaign and a Kickstarter campaign. The idea is, I want to just carry on next year with the John the Animator comics, where I do my own series for basically kids from ages of say 12 or 13 down to like 4. So it's like a different books, like the Snuffy and Zoe's would be for kids who are 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 years old, maybe, and then doing this other series, which is a sort of a regeneration of a series I did back in the 80s that I had published, that I had published in a book called what was it called? Comic Relief magazine, and for like 18 months that I did, and so it's a series that was based on. It was called Mega Moose, but this one is I've retitled it The Beast Within, and it's basically a kid who, with a magic feather, is given powers with a magic feather, and it turns into Mega Moose, but he has all the powers of the animal kingdom.
Interesting. Okay, I like that. Well, let me see, because I want to ask you a few. Because, oh man, like I said, you worked on HeMan, so I love HeMan so much. And I remember a couple months ago, I watched the Toys That Made Us. That's on Netflix, where they they do G.I. Joe, Star Wars. They do all like the Toys That Made Us, but in the instance of He-Man and I guess G.I. Joe, these are properties that were they used the cartoon series to set up the toy lines and all that. So it was So how early were you involved in the He-Man stuff? Because I know J. Michael Straczynski that created Babylon 5, and he's a prolific comic book writer and all of it. He was on He-Man as a writer as well, and I know he also is one of the co-creators of She-Ra. I guess that was his concept.
Yeah, no, well, those guys, I didn't get to Filmation until He-Man was up and running.
Oh, okay.
Because I was at Nelvana, and I was doing, let's see, I was at Nelvana up in Toronto. We were finishing up, Strawberry Shortcake, and I didn't work on I didn't work on Inspector Gadget. Inspector Gadget was a Nelvana production also, but I left Nelvana and went. What I was going to do was go to. I got to tell you these things because otherwise there are holes in my resume here. I was going to. I was meeting with Brad Bird and Jerry Reese to do the Spirit, the Eisner Spirit.
You talking about the movie with the
cartoon, the animated the animation of that they were trying to pitch to. They had left Disney, and they were pitching it to, or they were under the auspices of the producer who worked with George Lucas on Star Wars, and they had an office, and they were doing samples and whatnot. And so I did a sample scene of the Spirit, just kind of just walking around, talking and flipping his hat, his fedora, Stetson, what have you. And then I showed that to them. And then I showed them my reel from Rock and Rule, and with Cindy and Quad Hole and Mylar and Easter Fever, and that was one of the shorts I worked on as a director. Garrett Morris was our voice. And Garrett Morris and you gotta remember, Toronto had Second City up there, and so we had people who would be like, John Candy would do some voices for us every now and then. We had Garrett Morris. We had she was a joy. I'm sorry, I'm blanking here, but we had a lot of people there. We would get voices from these various people, and but anyway, so what I did was I was leaving Nelvana, and I got a contact to Brad Bird from another animator that I knew at Nelvana, and so I got there, and I was going to be on the Spirit, on the Will Eisner cartoon and feature if they could ever sell it, but by that time, it looked like it wasn't going to happen. So that's when I went to Bluth's for the video games.
Wow, all the way. Now, that's the same Brad Bird from The Incredibles, or is that someone? Okay, because I was like, I don't know how old he is, but he seemed like a young guy. That's why I was like, okay.
No, he's in his 60s.
Really?
Yeah.
I thought he looked like he was like 4. Although, like I said, The Incredibles has been out, but I mean, I remember seeing some of the DVDs and interviews and stuff that he was doing when The Incredibles came out, and he also did Ratatouille, which I thought was brilliant.
Yeah.
Oh, and I think he started directing movies. I can't remember that George Clooney. It's based on Tomorrowland. Okay, yeah, but I thought he did one of the I think it was it Ghost Rica? It was one of the Mission Impossible movies he directed too.
I think so. Yeah. Well, anyway, he's like, he's a very multifaceted gentleman, but it's still film. Film is.
Yeah. Oh, I'm a big fan of his. That's why I was like, oh my goodness.
Let's put it this way. Jerry Reese directed Iron Giant.
Vin Diesel was in. Yeah, he was the voice of the Iron Giant.
That was the thing. Because it was Brad Bird and Jerry Reese that were trying to get this Spirit deal up and running, but they couldn't get it because nobody thought animation was worth anything.
Oh God, you just kicked me in the gut right there.
That's the reality of it. We went through a terrible time where people just didn't want to. When I was working at Filmation on HeMan and She-Ra and other whatever projects I had there, the Disney what's his name, Eisner, not Will Eisner, what the other one, anyway, Disney was thinking of shutting down the animation studio.
Well, I've heard a lot of stuff about that, like when they finally decided to greenlight The Little Mermaid, which is one of my favorite. I remember I think I was in 8th grade when that came out, and they actually got it on VHS, and we watched it in the classroom. It was one of those days where we didn't have to do it. We had passed all our tests and everybody had behaved, so they was like, okay, we're gonna get to watch The Little Mermaid, and so they got the VHS, and I was like, this is a stupid girls movie. I don't want to watch this, but I love animation. So, because I even watched like Rainbow Bright and stuff, like I watched anything animation. I would, if as long as the story was decent and stuff, and I could get along with. So, I remember I watched The Little Mermaid and I was blown away by it. Was it Jeff Katzenberg and who is widely credited for saving Disney's animation, because went on, he had a slew of hits before he left and went to, and formed DreamWorks with Steven Spielberg and David Geffen. But Little Mermaid, big hit. Beauty and the Beast, big hit. Like Aladdin, big hit. Lion King, big hit. Just all these movies start coming out, and I was just, that's one of the things I noticed on your IMDb. It looked like you were. I know he did Prince of Egypt. I don't guess you worked on that film though, did you?
No, I didn't. I never worked at DreamWorks.
Okay. That's why I was like, yeah, because I noticed you had like you had some religious themed. You had it was like
that was Nest who were doing they were doing that kept me in because I had left California by that time. So talking in 1987, 86, 87. I'm trying to remember this here. All of it. Yeah. Filmation was, I was going to be, I just couldn't take LA anymore, you know? And so I said, how do we get there? Well, I was, doing quite well at Filmation. So they were going to keep me on staff just over, all I do was FedEx my stuff. So I was working on Brave Star. I was doing a whole bunch of stuff, from Rhode Island.
Wait a minute. So let me stop you right there. So you would actually have to do each individual scene, the cell or whatever.
No. What I would do is I would do my animation in pencil, my rough animation, and then I would FedEx it to back to Los Angeles from Rhode Island. That's what we did. Now I'll tell you a story about the Batman stuff. Okay. We did faxes with that.
Really?
Yes.
That blows me away to hear that.
Well, so I left LA, and people use FedEx all over the place, being able to go, ship second day. That would be it. That'd be fine. In 1986, 87, that's the way a lot of people worked outside of the, if you had a good reputation and people knew who you were and how well you would work, that's how you did it. But they could also trust that you knew that you could get it bang like that on the first thing without pencil testing, So I had that ability to do that. And so I took advantage of it. And 6 months after leaving, Hollywood, that's when Filmation was bought and it was shut down, and 500 people were all just scattered to the winds. It was all being done. It was who was it? What was the company? Was it? It was a French company that wanted the library that Filmation had, and they couldn't care less about the animation because all the animation was Filmation was the only studio at that time where all the work was done in the States and in-house.
That's actually something I wanted to, because I've noticed a lot of the modern animation, it's done in like Korea and stuff like that.
Everywhere, because you use the mechanics of harmony, the Toon Boom harmony and others. They use a central server, and everybody works off of that. You plug in, and you could be anywhere in the world because you're all going into the same hub. And so, that's how they share the information and so on and so forth. So the internet is a blessing, but it's a killer at the same time. It killed the animation industry, for people who don't like, who have individual. I'm sorry, I'm getting into certain things. I don't want to.
This is what I want to talk about, because that was one of the questions I wanted to ask you. Because when I see the way modern anime, matter of fact, I don't know. I'm still, like I said, I keep being told that I'm too old to enjoy this animated material or whatever and stuff. So I wanted to say I enjoy having the Cartoon Network, but I notice now when I look at the Cartoon Network, a lot of the cartoons, they're not really, I don't know. I feel like whatever age I am, I should be able to just turn the channel on and watch and not be preached to, and just be able to enjoy the material that is there. And the animation style is real rough, and it's all done with computers. And the Disney XD is like that too. It's like a lot of those newer animated shows just aren't to to my liking. I like the old school stuff.
Well, when I was coming up, you know, and the whole idea is to have it. You were supposed to have your own individual style. Now that's why I didn't fit into Disney. You know, you know, if you looked at my on my campaign thing sheet page there, I got a rejection letter from Disney. They said He said they liked it. This was in like 1972, 73, whatever it is. I tried to get there, you know, and they said I didn't. I had a good sense of entertainment, but I didn't draw well enough. Okay. 4 years later, when I was in California, after I'd had 2 years of feature experience on Tubby the Tuba and Raggedy Ann and Andy, and some time up in Toronto working on at Nelvana, and I was at the studio at the Patty Freeling working for Frizz Freeling, I called them up and I was ready to show them my resume, and I told them who I was and whatnot. They said, "Oh, you're too old." I hadn't turned 27 yet.
Wow, you're too old.
He said, "You got too much experience, and we can't remold you."
Oh, you too set in your ways. Okay, I got you.
Too set in your ways. You know, we don't. They wanted to be. They wanted you to not have an individual style. Whereas when I went back to Toronto at Nelvana, everybody had their own style. And you will note at the Disney, so the earliest at Disney animation, you could tell almost which animator did what scene. Same way with the Warner Brothers cartoons, the old classic stuff. Everybody had their own style. It was like, you know, like Bill Teitler is the top person of all time, and people don't know who he is, but you know Grumpy from Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs. Yeah. You know Baby Dumbo, that scene where he's mom, you know, Mother Jumbo is playing with the baby in the bath and all of that, and that where he's just when he goes visits her and she's behind the bars and all that. That is Bill Teitler. Then Night on Bald Mountain is Bill Teitler. He animated those 3 poems, and talk about the range of acting ability and drawing capability. So, but you could tell him from everybody else. So the idea is, you know, artists want to have. When I was breaking in, everybody wanted to have their own style. Today, who needs you?
I actually want to go back to something you just said, because you kind of sparked a question that I asked back in January to the great Steve Englehart when he was on this channel. We were talking about this thing to this current day where they're taking like golden age works from the comic book industry, from classic animation, and now like they're either not going to put those things are locked in the vault. They say we can't ever release this again because it's quote unquote racist or whatever. The reason I asked him the question, there was they were collecting. They were going to do a Golden Age edition of Captain Marvel, and I guess it was against the Master Society of Evil, where they had and they had like you know, it was World War II, and there were some things about Japanese and things like that. So they decided not to release it, and that led us to talking about some of the classic. You mentioned Dumbo. Song of the South was another movie that we mentioned, and this notion that we have to censor these things, and I believe that these materials should be released in their entirety. You can put your little forward about, hey, this came out at that time or whatever, but I don't believe that like movies like Dumbo should be censored or You know, I know Peter Pan. There's a thing in Peter Pan with the Indians and stuff. They were trying to that people were getting all up in arms about and everything. So
the dancing.
And I was like, I hate when because I believe those are masterpieces. They shouldn't be touched. I mean, Song of the South won an Academy Award at the time, but now they won't ever release that movie. I know it's been released in Europe, but I know over here it won't.
To answer your question, you can't rewrite history, especially when when it's all here. To deny that there were circumstances, to say, oh well, that was wrong, but that within the context, you have to understand what was going on back then. But at the same time, there's some stuff. I mean, for example, if you must have seen Coal Black and the Seven Dwarfs, right?
Yeah. If not, it's on YouTube.
Black actors doing that.
Yeah, and like I said, that there's actually a Wikipedia article on that one. There's a list of banned animated films.
Yeah,
and I looked. I've seen that on YouTube. There, like I said, someone has collected a lot of those banned animated films, and they've loaded them up on YouTube. And I'm glad they're available for people to see, because I think the animation on them are beautiful. Where you can think that they're offensive. I don't know. I just like I like the animation. I like the history of the animators that worked on those pieces. It's like Tom and Jerry and Heckle and Jekyll. A lot of those old shorts, they're like, oh no, this racist now. You can't, or if they do, it's got to be edited. And I was like, no, just leave it as is. I used to love that Heckle and Jekyll and Tom and Jerry and stuff like that. I don't know.
Well, it's kind of like the thing is, the thing about it is, I look at if you look at the Tom and Jerry's that I think that they're alluding to is the housekeeper.
Yeah, and I'll be honest. I don't know if you could tell. I happen to be a black man.
Oh yes, I can tell.
Yeah. Okay. Well, the housekeeper actually reminded me a lot of my aunt Bernice. She I mean, she's like 75 now. She's but she's still with us, God bless her. Mm-hmm. And she, with the, she'd have the little bonnet, she'd have her hair tied up and all that. She talked a lot like that. That's the way she sounded. I mean, but I'm from Alabama originally, so that's just it. It seemed very familiar to me.
Right. Well, that's the thing, is that it is crazy. I this is along the same thing. I have lived in the Cincinnati, Lexington area since 1990. Okay. We moved to Cincinnati in 90. We're in Lexington since 2006. Okay. I see church ladies all the time. I see young girls, young black girls with hairstyles that are very different. I was doing the educational material, and people who said that this was wrong, we couldn't draw girls from black girls with their hair done a certain way because that was racist.
Oh God!
And I said, "But you got to be kidding me!" I mean, and I said, "No, you can't do that. You can't do that." And I must have seen, the time we had to change stuff, and that was the people who do not understand culture. They do not. For some reason, people want to say you can't do that. I should not have a mustache because I'm Italian. I mean, you can go look at my great grandfather's mustache. I mean, I got the same thing as what both of them had. But that's the Italian organ grinder, cliche.
Oh man, this is well, and things like this have bothered me because my sister-in-law, I had my brother and his family, they moved to the Midwest. They live in Kansas. They moved there like 22 years ago.
Mm-hmm.
And so, occasionally I'll fly up there and visit for a week or something and come back. And some years ago, she had gone to Walmart, I guess, and bought one of these classic Warner Brother cartoon DVD. And she knows that I'm an animation head and stuff, right? So I'm sitting there with my niece and a couple of my nephews, and they go, "Hey, you guys want to?" And a lot of times when you're babysitting kids, people, sometimes the adults don't want to watch cartoons. I'm like, "Yeah, throw the cartoon on. I'm excited." And so she put Bugs Bunny on, and it was some of the classic, Fritz Feeling, all this. It was these classic cartoons. And then, so this one's set in World War II, and it's Bugs Bunny, and it's, they're doing the Nazis, and they used to show the swastikas, and all of a sudden they blurred the swastikas out, and all this kind of, it was weird. And then there was another one where he was doing like a Civil War bit with him and Yosemite Sam, and he was playing like a slave, and all of a sudden they're editing things out and all this kind of, and I was like, they used to show this on television when I was a little boy, and now they're trying to rewrite history for some reason.
Well, the thing is that you got to remember, those cartoons were done when we were at war for the existence of humanity. People do not they don't want to recognize that we were really going to be destroyed by people who wanted to destroy us. Okay, you have a war. The Nazis were not, playing games. The Japanese were not playing games. So how do you motivate your society that has to say it's a do or die situation, but it's also a comical one? I mean, they're doing it's gallows humor too.
Well, that's the thing. As a comic book guy, you see the comic book pieces. You see Superman, Batman, Wonder Woman. They're all on the side of our troops, and they're fighting. Now that stuff's like, oh no, you can't show that. This is.
Well, I've got a run of Captain Marvels. From the 19. I've got it from 19 what is it, 40 something and whatever. The whole thing, and I've got
the Fawcett comics.
Yes. Yeah. Well, this is this Marvel thing is not Miss Marvel is not Captain Marvel. No, I'm sorry, Shazam is Captain Marvel.
Yeah, well, I refuse to call him Shazam. Shazam's the wizard. Captain Marvel is Billy Batson, Captain Marvel. And they go, no, you mean Shazam? I was like, no, I mean Captain Marvel, which is who he was. He was there several years before Marvel Captain Marvel, and now Carol Danvers Captain Marvel.
Yeah, Well, I think I've got that what is it? This Society of Evil. That's the thing that you're talking. There was a print. There was a big, there's an 11 by 17 version of it that came out, maybe about 25 years ago. I've got that one. Where it's your big. It's in a slip jacket.
Oh man, I love that.
You pick it up in there. I mean, it was bad. It was badly. The binding is not good because that's the way they did it. I mean, but it was still. It flips. It's fine. It's what have you. But they're a very big size. It's oversized. And so I've got that, and then you've got the full gamut of all the stories. But there was no problem with that in 1992. Whatever it was,
I
don't know. I do not know how you can write for anything without stepping on toes if you are writing for a major corporation.
Well, that's kind of why I was, like I said, I'm kind of, like I said, I got Steve Englehart's perspective on it, and he kind of, it seems like the three of us are all on the same page. If this material exists, and I believe it should be released as, obviously cleaned up and, restored to make it look pristine, but stop censoring everything. Quit trying to edit scenes out and doing all. I just believe that's wrong.
Mm-hmm.
I think it should stand as a testament of the time period. It should not be altered in that way. And DC had done the work. They were doing this beautiful edition, which I was planning on purchasing because I'm a big Captain Marvel fan.
Right.
And so and it had a lot of the work from CC Beck in it, which, you know, a legend in comic book industry. And I'm like, why would you take this? They had done the work. It had already been set to be released. And then they go, this might be racist. We can't release it now. I was like, I was so frustrated at DC for doing that.
Extreme frustration. I heard that. I mean, I read that and I went, geez. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
No, I was just, it's just really frustrating. You know, like I said, because this was something I was looking forward to. I was like, oh man, they're recoloring it. It's gonna be beautiful. It's gonna be hardbound. It's gonna be awesome. And I was just looking forward, and then it's someone.
Well, you know, there is a version of it. I mean, I think on Amazon, some publishing company has done a. I guess it's they've done not their own version, but they took some copies of the entire, you know, evil Society of Evil, and then have a trade paperback version of it.
Well, I would actually. Okay, so I need to look into that.
Go look into that, because I think there's still some elements that are there are some books, some copies from this company. I mean, just check it out on Amazon. Just, you know, the Monster Society of Evil. Okay, so, you know, check that out.
Yeah, like I said, I've had these conversations. Obviously, like I said, Steve Englehart. I talked to him. I had Jeff Smith, the Eisner Award winner, on. I had him on a couple months ago, and he's kind of got a rebel spirit, and he talked about a lot of the things that we right at the end we talked about, like Mad Magazine closing down after like 60 years or whatever. It's I really think that this material should be preserved and released as is, and I don't know, it's for the time period. It's a time capsule. Right. I don't like revisionist history. It's just not the way things
right. Yeah, I agree. And it's kind of like, I mean, you don't have to like, I mean, Huckleberry Finn or Tom Sawyer. I mean, what do you want? You know, I mean,
they're sanitizing some of those books. They've tried to sanitize some of those books and stuff. Like, it's like, oh, this shouldn't be in the library, like to Tom Sawyer and all that. I'm like, come on, man. I don't that if I know I've read enough books and saw enough movies to know that once we start censoring that kind of stuff, we are walking into a very slippery slope right there. We start.
Yeah, I just don't agree with that at all. And what that makes it, it's kind of like, well, you know, what are you? Are you offending their ear? Why are you being offended them by the actual truth of the circumstance? It's not just somebody's opinion. This is what occurred. But like, you know, I mean, my father-in-law said, kids need to eat a little dirt to understand. You need to be able to be inoculized to understand what was the time, what was the place, what was going on, and why was it wrong? But this is what it was. Now, you can understand people doing things, but that doesn't mean that something that was done extremely well, has to be just relegated to the dustbin. I mean, there are it's a time and a place, but also humor is different from one era to another. I'm sure that your average joke today would not play well back then either.
Yeah, and that's the thing, because I obviously I have a big problem with taking like classics from someone like Mark Twain, and because there was a company and they were like, because a lot of these are in public domain, these properties where anyone can release them, and so they were like taking the books and like sanitizing certain things in the book, and I was like, who's doing that? It's like the material, it should not be touched.
Right.
Leave it as the author intended and quit messing with it.
Yeah.
And I just I don't know. I guess I should get off my soapbox, but that's just
okay.
something I believe.
Well, that's a part of the thing about being an independent, is do something that you want, find your audience, and do it.
Wiser words have never been spoken. My goodness. John, this has been a privilege having you on. I appreciate your time. This has been an amazing conversation, and and I was like, your project looks really good. And I see my buddy Brian Christgau in the chat says that he backed it. He is Brian is an awesome comic book creator. He has a project called Six Gun Gorilla, and it's very fascinating. He sent me a few copies of it, and he's got it like in trade paperback form on Indiegogo, and successfully got that thing funded. He's a interesting conversation. So it's nice to see fellow free thinkers out in the chat, and I appreciate him supporting your project. And
yes, I appreciate it very much. Thank you.
Yeah, and but John, is there anything that you would like to leave us with? Like I said, I could talk to you for 3 hours. Your career is just so you've got so much.
It's kind of it'd be an interesting conversation at some other time, I guess, because it could get into a lot of different things. But I think the independent comic industry. I mean, I remember I was a self-publisher back in the 90s, mystery novels and stuff of that sort, mystery and crime fiction novels. My wife and I wrote stuff, and so we self-published it, got it into bookstores, got it into Barnes and Noble, got them into stuff. But when things go and the corporations get they take over, they'd knock out all the small little people. And I got knocked out because we were with Ingram, we were with Baker and Taylor, whatever they just knocked us all out. So I'm very glad, we couldn't afford, we couldn't handle, what their limitations were, and what we had to, the bars were raised so high, we just could not, function anymore. So we just said, okay, that's it. We're not going to bother with it. But I'd like to, have a conversation about where the the comic book industry, where the artist can go. How are we doing stuff? What are we aiming at? I mean, and so that's the kind of story, the conversation I'd like to have with you, because we have I love talking about the past, but I still got a couple of another chapter to live on this earth, and absolutely. I'm moving forward into that, and I want to produce material for a market that an audience that isn't being served.
Still my beating heart, and this is wow. Like I said, we'll have to get you back on again or something, just because you have a lot to say, and I have a lot of more questions to ask.
Okay.
And but this has been fun, and John, you have a YouTube channel as well, and I know that there's a link to it on your Indiegogo page. But plug your YouTube and all that kind of stuff. If people want to touch base with you, your social medias, all.
Just at Twitter, I'm at Celestri John. There, and on YouTube, just type in, John Celestri, and it'll just go right to it. I use a blog, an old blog there that with a lot of other things, but those are the two major things I use: is the YouTube video and a YouTube channel and my Twitter account. And right now it's for the next 6 days, I guess, is the Indiegogo campaign. So
yeah, for Ruff Sketch, which I appreciate all the mods that have been dropping the link in the description there. That helps not only the people that are watching now, but the people that will be watching this on the playback later on. That's always fun. So, and obviously the link to Ruff Sketch is in the description. Again, I want to thank the great John Celestri for being here today. This has been a privilege, sir. I have enjoyed this conversation. You are a treasure trove of knowledge, and I'm getting choked up thinking about my childhood memories, and you've given me your career has just given me so much enjoyment. I was a big fan.
I'm glad that we had. I'm glad we had this time together. That's great.
And guys, we're gonna get out of here. Please check out John Celestri's Ruff Sketch. It's on Indiegogo for a few more days. Support that project. This is one of those that I think this is an important voice, and we need to support. So please get out there and check it out. And it's very affordable, by the way. Look at all the price, the tiers. It's not, I see some of these campaigns and everything's way overpriced and everything. It's it's not going to cost you much, and you'll be able to get something from a legend in the business. But again, John, thank you so much. This is Antonio. But we're going to get out of here, guys. Always, reach out. I'm on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, and right here on this YouTube, all at Ikari Press. Thank you guys so much for hanging out with us. And again, a digital round of applause for the great John Celestri, guys. We're out.
Thank you.